Lukashenko abruptly sworn in, Belarus opposition calls for more protests.
Here's a summary of the article.
The opposition, which has staged more than 6 weeks of mass protests demanding his resignation, denounced the inauguration as illegitimate and called for more demonstrations on Wednesday evening. The official news agency Belta said Lukashenko placed his right hand on a copy of the constitution and swore the oath of office at a ceremony attended by several hundred people. Calls circulated on social media for mass protests for the evening. At a summit last week, Putin granted Lukashenko a $1.5 billion loan, and the two countries are holding Slavic Brotherhood defense exercises in Belarus. As part of those drills, Russian paratroopers parachuted into Belarus on Wednesday. The United Nations agreed last week to step up monitoring of reported human rights abuses in Belarus. Rights investigator Anne Marin said more than 10,000 people had been abusively arrested since the election, with more than 500 reports of torture and thousands savagely beaten.
This post received a score of 11,000, with an upvote ratio of 98%. Here are the top comments in response to this article.
The swearing-in makes the facade of legitimacy which will be invoked when Russia sends in troops.
If everybody there says he is not president, does saying some magic words with your hand on a book really change anything? It means nothing unless the people let it mean something.
No, but he can say he did everything legally to become president. He won a democratic election and followed the rules to be sworn in. He can hand-wave away an accusation that the election was fraudulent.
Democratic.
He can say they are democratic, he just wants the small veneer of legality. That way it's easier to spin when he calls for Daddy Russia for help. It is not democratic.
Fuck. Bad guys win again.
Just wait for the U.S. fuckery after the election. Barr is foaming at the teeth right now.
What, you think USA are still the good guys?
Have not for years. Growing up in France, I always wondered in school how the Nazis came up to power legally. Now I understand.
He looks like Dr. Phil.
Ha 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 ha, fuck sake. I was reading this thread all serious, but this made me bust up. He does.
I mean, they're both shitty humans.
With all disrespect to Dr. Phil, Lukashenko is much worse.
Protests only work if the regime is on the verge of collapse. I really wish global democracy advocates had a more effective fallback option than protests. Not quite a French or Russian aggressive exportation of revolution, but some global solidarity would be nice. To clarify, protests are an amazing demonstration of mass support and can help bring about drastic change. But I was born well after the revolutions of 1990. I haven't seen a peaceful protest work in years. Maybe Ukraine counts, but Russia's follow-up invasion seems to show Putin and the KGB learned their lessons.
The Ukraine protests weren't peaceful. Wikipedia shows up to 800 dead and up to 300 missing.
Also, there is that whole civil war going, by the way.
Not really a civil war, more of a siege by Russian mercenaries in a small area. An unnecessary conflict that still hasn't been fully solved, even though a very unconventional comedian took over as president for the country with the intent of rectifying it a year or two ago. Lucky that Ukraine destroyed their nuclear weapons a couple of decades ago. Wouldn't have ended up pleasant otherwise.
Greater than not really a civil war, more of a siege by Russian mercenaries in a small area. That's because the Minsk agreement was signed to lower the conflict. Prior to its signing, there was a major conflict. Now, it's mostly just skirmishes and each side trying to get an upper hand.
This video was automatically created by Reddit to speech. The article and comments in this video were selected from Reddit according to their upvotes, and any paraphrasing was performed by smmry.com, without any human intervention.